Our guest today is named Mr. Multimedia by Billboard Magazine, a fundamental part of the North American family entertainment scene, winner of the Parents' Choice Award, and four-time Juno Award winner, and a man who crawled out of a hollow log for 12 seasons, over 900 episodes. The Canadian Minister of Positivity, Mr. Fred Penner. Wow, just wow, Fred, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, and welcome to our show.
Thank you so much, Chris. Pleasure to be here.
Now, Fred, not many people know this about you, and certainly I didn't either, but you were actually once an economics student. What was the change from economics to music and entertaining?
It was an unexpected transition, oddly enough. I was the first of my generation to go to university. From our family, we came from Mennonite, southern Manitoba background, and my dad was in the Canadian Forces. And by the time I reached, my late teens, it was, what am I going to do with my life direction? And so I finished high school, and I thought, well, I'll go to university because that was a preferable thing to do, because nobody had told me that I could ever make a career as a musician. So I went to university, and I did a basic arts program with a major in economics. And then after I got my degree, my father and my younger sister, who was born with Down syndrome, she died, and then my dad died a year later. So I was faced, after this graduation with mortality, awareness that two of the most important people in my life were gone now. And now what am I going to do with my life? I knew I didn't really want to be an economist. I had done that particular path just to really satisfy my parents' desire for their child to go to university. Right. So I did my soul searching at that point at what am I capable of doing, because I had no other skills. I wasn't trained for anything, but following my bliss with music, because that was the one thing that I'd always participated in from grade school, high school, even at university, all sorts of choirs and folk groups. And so I thought, well, here it is. Here's my point of transition. Let's see if, in fact, I can make something of myself from a musical point of view. And I just started playing and performing, acting, doing any kind of theatrical event. And that ultimately led to working with families in the late 70s.
So is this kind of where Cornstalk emerged from, the band that you used to be in?
Yeah, exactly. In 1973, Cornstalk began, and it was with some friends that I had known, in my Winnipeg days. The leader, his name is Al Simmons, and Al and I, oddly enough, were in Air Cadets together. Oh. Our fathers were both in the military, so they encouraged us to do that. And Al and I became instant friends, or continued our relationship, on a musical path. And Cornstalk was born in 73 to 77, and we toured from Calgary to Toronto was our span. We didn't go too much farther.
When you're recording, a lot of people just get flustered and filled with anxiety. Do you remember the very first time you walked into that recording studio, feeling like you made it?
I had no intention ever of doing a recording, and then an offer sort of came up after doing a presentation in Winnipeg from a doctor and his wife who loved my singing. It was a children's performance that my ex-wife and I had put together. Wow. And I'd written all the music for it. They loved my sound, so they basically gave me a blank check to go and make a recording. Unbelievable godsend. And I remember a beautiful studio in Winnipeg called Wayne Finucane Studios. And I was excited. Certainly, I brought together friends, musicians in the city who were prepared to help with this project. And I was a novice when it came to the recording industry, but getting into a studio and just watching, really paying attention to what was going on and the positioning of microphones and trying to do, sing as clearly, it's all the things that you would normally do in a recording thing. You want it to be as good as possible. So warm up your voice, prepare before you actually put something on tape. So there was, apprehension a little bit, because this was a huge new step in my musical career,
Right.
but it seemed to work out all right.
Now, do you still get overwhelmed when you go into that studio? I mean, you have a new song called Somebody Believes. When you
Mm.
walk in to do that recording, and I saw that video, you had so many people in there, all different talents. Like, just watching it, I felt overwhelmed.
Oh, that's very sweet of you to say. It was a major project to do. My dear friend and co-producer Paul O'Neill, he put together many of the musical pieces for that,
Okay.
and we just started building it, then bringing in a choir and making it as strong a piece as we possibly could. At that point, I'd already done 13 albums, so I am pretty comfortable in a studio space, and with that song in particular, it came from a really interesting position, and I just loved the process that we were into, and I loved the message that it was conveying to the listening audience.
Now, I was reading online that Somebody Believes is actually based off of, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, a child at World Vision. Is that right?
Yes, there was a fellow named Edgardo Gonzalez. He's from the Philippines, and I've been connected with World Vision for many years. I went to Africa to do a program for child sponsorship in the early 20s, early 2010, somewhere around there, and and there was a support event happening in Vancouver for other people who were, sponsoring children, and just to give them a pat on the back.
Sure.
And Edgardo was presenting there, and his story was, World Vision had come to the Philippines to be as helpful as they could to the folks there, and there was his family, and World Vision sponsored his siblings, and ultimately he's now come to Canada. He's working for World Vision. Wonderful man, really a delicate, gentle, beautiful soul. And in the course of his presentation, he said, I wouldn't be here now if somebody hadn't believed in me. Somebody believed in me, so I succeeded in life. And I'm listening to him, and as I do when I'm anywhere that when I know there's a lot of energy happening, I've got my notepad out. I'm making
Right.
little, scrolls here and there.
Wow.
And the phrase "somebody believes" is so universally true that in our world, if we don't have, whether it's a teacher or a family member or whoever, if somebody doesn't come up and give you that pat on the back and say you're doing good work and keep it up, and all of that stuff, that we feel buoyant and ready to continue.
Of course.
That phrase "somebody believes" is just very powerful. So I absorbed that. I went back to my hotel room, and within about an hour, I had the song. It was one of
Beautiful.
those inspirational moments that really filled me, certainly to the brim.
Now, you had mentioned your experience with 13 children albums released and your
Yeah.
familiarity with the studio. You actually have an album called Fred's Favorites. But is
Mhm.
there a Fred's favorite song that of all the songs, you're like, that's the one I love the most?
There's a lot of tunes that I've written along the way, and as I said, some of them happen very quickly. Some of them are you know t- are still works in progress. But there's a song that I wrote a while back. I am a family entertainer. I work with certainly with children, with parents, with grandparents. I try to encompass families on
Of course.
all spectrum, right? And I try and bring messages that have value, like somebody believes, like take good care of each other, the last song of Fred Penner's Place. And there's a tune I wrote called Proud. And as we're going through this COVID experience, and I've used this a few times in performance, how I am so proud of the caregivers and the frontline workers and all the people who have put themselves on the line to make a difference for all of us. So
Wow.
the word proud, the song itself, you've got to be proud of the people around you, proud of the things that you do, proud of your dreams and feelings inside, never afraid to let them come true, never afraid to make them come true.
That's beautiful.
So it has that kind of message that is, again, universal, but it touched people, and I've had lots of really positive response to that song and to that message and to that energy. So I'll put proud at the top of the list today.
With some of your songs, you actually sing both in English and French. Is there a hidden meaning? Like, what's the importance to do that for you?
Well, we are a bilingual country, certainly, and I lived in Ottawa for a year and a half. My dad was transferred there with the Canadian Forces, so we lived in Hull or Gatineau for those the couple of years, and I learned my foundation of French was in grade 4.
Okay.
And I have an affinity for language. I love to play with sound. I love to play with language. I know how to count to 10 in about a dozen languages. I know how to say I don't know in many languages. I love the sound of playing with language, and the way that music is affected by the different words that you have in a different language. So it's so for those two reasons, we are a bilingual country. I celebrate all languages, and so putting some of that on my Christmas album. I'm not sure if you've heard that yet. There's probably 10 different languages. There's 17th century Spanish, Ukrainian. Actually, with the Ukrainian crisis now, there's 2 Ukrainian Christmas songs on that album, and my heart just goes out so deeply to the challenges that are happening there. But so I have French, Spanish, Italian, German. That album is really a celebration of language and music of the season for me.
Now, you mentioned about our hearts reaching out. So many people love your music, myself included. Cat in the Hat. I remember my parents singing that to me, and I know that I'm singing it to my son. Do you ever get overwhelmed by the impact you've had on so many lives and the generations to come with everything that you've done? Your music, just absolutely everything.
That's an interesting thing, because my wife has pointed it out a couple of times that there's an arrogance that can happen if you take the comments that people make to you too seriously.
Okay.
I mean, I've been on the road performing for 45 years. I've had countless beautiful comments from people, really heartfelt moments to the point of tears, at somewhere along the way. But this is advice for any performer, is you can't put stock in that necessarily.
Okay.
It's like, I'm not expecting people to bolster me with my music. I create from my heart. I do it to the best of my ability, and I put it to you to absorb it. But for me to expect that it's going to make a difference, and where I could be overwhelmed by that, and this is my wife has learned this lesson and passed it on to me. It's none of my business.
Fair enough.
That part is none of my business. I can only do the best that I can do with the gifts that I have, and however you take it is where you take it, right?
2020, we were in the midst of the pandemic, but that actually marked the 40th year of your song, The Cat Came Back.
Yeah.
And some people say that this actually kickstarted the career for you. So what was it like creating The Cat Came Back?
Well, that's an interesting story, because The Cat Came Back, and I know there are many people who are under the illusion or the disillusion that I wrote the song originally.
Okay.
It's actually from 1896. It was part of the old minstrel shows and Chautauquas, in the northeastern United States. And I remember hearing the song when I was growing up, but it was a major version. a singer named Sonny James recorded it, with a major key, and then I found the minor key, the E minor D CB7 turnaround, and it was so much fun to play. I was in a jam with my brother and a cousin of mine in Winnipeg, and it just felt so good to play that pattern and to work with it. So when the offer came to do an album in the late 70s, that was clearly going to be the signature tune of that album, along with other songs that I'd grown up with, like Ghost Riders in the Sky, that was never considered children's songs. It Ain't Gonna Rain No More from 1924 was not considered a children's song. It was sort of a novelty tune. But I just brought together as many songs as made a difference to me, and the Cat was at the top of that list, and it certainly was, and as I said, has become my signature tune, and it's taken on many different verses. I've adapted it, I've altered it a number of times for different occasions, like when the Winnipeg Jets were finally came back to Winnipeg. I wrote The Jets Came Back. And there's an interesting thing that we're in the middle of right now. There's a band from the West Coast called Five Alarm Funk.
Okay.
I know that band. They're a big drum, big sound. I mean, a huge band, and we've been collaborating the last while doing The Band Came Back, and I wrote the lyrics for it, and I recorded the song, and that's going to be released as a single before too long. So you're in the front line of this information, Chris, here before it's even done. But that's the song has just continued to fill me. I love playing it. I never tire of putting it to an audience, and I'll be doing that in the next couple of days in Revelstoke and Kelowna, and then some island performances over the next couple of months.
Brilliant. So you're a writer, you're an author, you're a singer-songwriter, a composer, actor, husband, father, TV host. What is something that people just blatantly tend to misunderstand about you?
Sometimes, because I work with families, with children, people sometimes think that I'm always, the bright up, happy guy, and I am for the most part. But there's a part of me that is so caring, on a much deeper level. What I do is not superficial, and I think what I want people to know is that I take what I do very seriously. As my sort of mantra is, never underestimate your ability to make a difference in the life of a child. And I bring that to the table from my experience with my sister, as I said, who was born with Down syndrome and died at a critical time of my development, and the special needs kids that I worked with over the years. All of that gets really inside of me and sort of affirms to me that this multi-decade path that I'm on has been valuable to me, and obviously others have accepted that, as I presented it. But I want people to know that I'm a serious guy, Chris.
In your opinion, what is something that, I mean, everything that you said there was beautiful. Is there one specific thing that you feel society needs to change our perception on tomorrow?
Don't take yourself so seriously. No, I mean, it's sort of in opposition to what I've just said. I'm a serious person, but it's what needs to happen. I think is people need to be more understanding. They need to listen more carefully. They need to be more supportive for the people around you. Don't be so critical for what's happening. I mean, trying desperately to be accepting of others, regardless of the cultural background, regardless of language, regardless. We are ultimately all in this absolutely insane world together. We are just little specks of sand trying to figure out our life path, and the greed comes in, and the angst comes into your spirit, and you just get completely lost So I want people to really pay attention to what it is that's going to make them feel that they are whole, that they are loved, that they are strong in their being, both physically, mentally, spiritually. Those elements need to come together for a person to feel whole and positive in this world.
You've published all of these books. Is there one that is specific, in your opinion, to kind of meet today in 2022? Out of all the children's books that you have, is there one that you say, hey, that's the one that would speak volumes in 2022?
Well, I've not written many books. And all the books that I've done have been based on songs that I've done. So Ebenezer Sneezer was a book once upon a time. That's long out of print. The Cat Came Back has been a book along the way. Proud was turned into a book for a while, but the main book that I'm selling now in my concerts is a song called The Bump, and I put it on the first record, and it is a story about a bump who aspires to be something different, aspires to be a hill where people can toboggan, aspires to be a mountain where people can climb, aspires to be a volcano with explosion and all that. But ultimately, the bump is just a bump, and a family arrives on the scene to build a house on top of this bump. So bump's purpose in life has been accepted. You know, it's a very simple story, but I think it's like home is where the heart is. Okay. It's the message is learn to be content with what you've got, do the best with what you have, and celebrate who you are in this world.
It kind of leads me to my next question. A lot of people feel if they had a time machine, they could go back in time and say, I would tell this to my younger self and get started sooner rather than later, or change direction. Is there something that you would go back and tell your younger self to do?
Nobody ever told me that I could make a career out of performing. If someone had said that earlier on, I received lots of, hey, Fred, that was good. You sang that well. You played that well. But nobody ever said, why don't you go to music school? Why don't you actually learn the intricacies and the skill of composing? Because I've written hundreds and hundreds of songs, but I've always felt that I didn't quite have the skill to score them properly. Okay. But then the Beatles didn't know how to write music either. So put that in perspective. But I think if someone had said earlier on that you really do seem to have an affinity for music, why don't you consider following that path? I may have gone that direction, and then my path may have altered, in a different way, where I would not be where I am now, for whatever reason. I have no disappointment with not having gained those skills earlier on. I feel totally fulfilled as a musician. I feel fulfilled as a creator. I feel the buoyancy of a very big life. I'm 75 years old now, and I'm still I'm going back on the road after COVID. We'll see how that goes. So I love the life that I'm living. I love the work that I've done over this amount of time, and I just encourage people to follow your bliss, do the absolute best you can to be the best person you can be.
So you had mentioned that you're going back on the road there. Where can people learn more about your upcoming projects and tour dates and everything like that?
Yeah, on fredpenner.com.
Okay.
My tour information is there. People can send me email that comes straight to me on that site if there's questions. We've got dates now until the middle of July from coast to coast. I just signed a contract for a gig in Grand Falls in Newfoundland on the 18th of July, and playing in Nanaimo this next month, in Victoria in June, and the children's festivals in Vancouver and in Winnipeg over the next while. So fredpenner.com. I try to keep that up to date, but I look forward to connecting with some of your viewers and see where that takes us.
Absolutely. I have time for one last question for you today,
Okay.
Fred. What makes Fred Penner smile?
The simplest things I can, as I look around me, I'm just about to get my hair cut, and the building you see behind me is my haircutter space. But they've got a beautiful garden here, and I'm looking at a rose bush beside me, and I'm seeing the beginning of sprouts happening. And this has always been part of my. I look down. There's a patch of rhubarb growing on the ground here. That delights me. That makes me smile. Seeing the simplest things in life can bring me to tears occasionally. And that's, I think that's definitely something that my mother taught me. She was really strong and a wonderful soul. She passed about 15 years ago now, but she had a similar kind of sensitivity, and that's what makes me smile. The littlest things can take me there easily.
The road of life will twist and turn, and maybe we'll lose our way. But faith and hope are always there to listen to what we say. Brothers and sisters, side by side, doing what must be done, building a house a brick at a time, under the moon and sun. Somebody believes in, somebody believes in, somebody believes in you. Somebody believes in, somebody believes in, somebody believes in you. Time belongs to everyone. Wishes and dreams survive. Find the strength and sing the songs
that help you come alive.
somebody believes in, somebody believes in, somebody believes in you. Somebody believes in, somebody believes in, somebody believes in you. This is the moment, now is the time, now's the time. What do I have to give? What do I have to give? Take my hand, reaching out in love. Isn't this why we live? Isn't this why we live? Isn't this why we live?
The road of life will twist and turn.
Somebody believes in you.
Faith and hope are always
and sing the song. Somebody believes it. Somebody believes it. Somebody believes in you. Oh, somebody believes. Somebody believes it. Somebody believes it. Somebody believes in you.
Somebody believes in you.
Somebody believes it. Somebody believes it. Somebody believes. Oh, somebody believes.
Somebody believes in you.
Somebody believes.